There we go. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. Once again, only on YouTube. I don't know until this account gets old enough, I won't be able to do it on. I'll probably get this account old enough, but just at the time when the old account comes back and active again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah.
It's like, I didn't do anything wrong. People get banned for doing things wrong and they get a 5-day ban. I didn't do anything wrong and got a 180-day ban. Like, get over yourselves.
Anyway. There's no way to beat the bureaucracy. You can't fight City Hall, so to speak.
Well, I think there needs to be laws. Yeah, there needs to be laws passed about this, but that's another day. Okay. So, number of things going on at the moment. Up here, the thing we delayed from last week was about Niagara Falls City planning for budget for 2025, right? And there's quite a few. Well, we didn't cover that last week, did we? And we said we would do it.
Oh, I forgot about that. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So on the 2025 budget, most councillors are basically saying they need to be looking at reducing the tariff as far as we can, right?
Because
the city's talking about
staff has come up with a recommendation of 3.9 to 6.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the councillors have been saying that that's not good enough, right? City of Niagara Falls, Jason Burgess, explained that recreation and culture will be, as well as discretionary services, will be where most of the cuts will be made if keeping taxes low is the largest priority. Right?
Yes, like... aren't we just hearing the same thing we heard last time, basically? The recommendation by staff says you're going to need 3.9 to 6% to keep things going. And of course, the politicians are saying, oh, wait a minute, that's way too much. That's way too much. And yet, every time that Burgess has told them, whatever cuts you want, you're not going to like them. Mona Patel came up, well, why don't you come up with $1 million worth of cuts that we can do? First thing he does is he takes, well, here's $250,000 we can save right here. So that's $1/4 of the million they asked for. And that was the
moving the emergency call center, yeah.
Yeah, moving the American and teaming up with St. Catharines that will reduce it by $240,000 and make it even more efficient. But the fire department did not want to lose any of its sort of what it does, and it argued successfully. It scared the councilors because they don't want to go against the fire department, and Mike Strange led the charge on that. No, we can't have that done because it might put us in an unsafe position. And that the arguments by Jason Burgess, the CEO Burgess said, no, if anything, it would be better. It's not going to be any worse and maybe even better. And those people who are transferred there from here will make better money as well.
Yeah. And the thing is that, if you live in somewhere like, there's many services you get that are instant services whereby the people who provide them are all local, but the call centers are all remote, and yet there's plenty of emergency services and things like that. If you're calling your plumber, the guy from around the corner comes in to actually do the work, but you don't know. You might well be calling him in North Bay or something, the call center might be there.
Yeah, and that's just the way it is. But
Yeah.
The fact that he made strong arguments that there would be no the Niagara Falls Fire Department said that we are a unique organization here. We have the gorge and other unique and high buildings and all that, so we have a unique situation. If we're off by a second or two, it could make a big difference if we're going to save somebody's lives or not. That doesn't really work because there are backups, and who's gonna take that responsibility if Niagara Falls call center, for some reason collapses or doesn't work? It would be picked up by another call center. Hopefully, they have that backup. And the council was just frightened in their boots. It's just they weren't going to touch it. That was $250,000, $250,000, right there.
Yeah.
And they refused to do it. And also, as we've spoke of in this show before, the elephant in the room here is the fire department's budget, which takes 1/4 of all the revenue that comes into the city, and the pay compensation for the firefighters seems to be extraordinary. And they 83 of the top 100 top paid employees in the city, the 83 of the top 100 are firefighters.
Yeah.
That we definitely want to pay the firefighters as much as we can afford, but we can't afford them. And I don't think they talk too much about that at all in this. They're trying to find fees for swimming pools, other kinds of things all around the margins. I mean, definitely the people of Niagara Falls are facing a lot of problems. They are facing our economy has not bounced back for the average person. We are going to get a break coming up. I guess the Bank of Canada is going to lower the interest rates again a little bit. So that might be a little bit of a break for us. But in the meantime, the standard of living has dropped quite a bit for the people of Niagara Falls. And I can understand them not wanting to impose anything more on the taxpayer. But if you need, but remember that same inflationary forces are the things that are driving the city to ask for a 3.9 to 6% increase. And that, of course, is not even counting what the region's going to ask for.
Well, yeah.
How do you get around it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the things I note here is, okay, CIO Burgess basically is saying that the recreation and culture and discretionary services will be where most of the cuts will be made to keep taxes as low is the highest priority, right? Well, actually, that's an interesting question. I'm not saying this, but let's take, for example, the firemen's wages. What would happen if we didn't put them up? I'm not taking that particular stance. I'm just asking the question. So there would be an impact upon the city budget, and that may actually, given that the fire department is actually 25% of the city budget, there's potential there that we could save money, or at least not increase money.
Yeah, that's the
and I'm not taking that stance. I'm just taking that theoretical position. You know what I mean?
Yes, and we know that when I think they're coming up to negotiations with the fire department, and I really don't think that the city councilors have the backbone to say, we got to reduce the pay of the firefighters. I just don't think they have the backbone for that. I don't. I think they're more likely to close pools and recreational services and that kind of thing. We're going to close the new pickleball court. What are we going to do? Where's this money going to come from? The city needs money. So there are two options: cut services or raise taxes.
Yeah.
It looks like to me there's going to, in order for the for the councils to look good, they're going to have to cut some services that aren't so controversial and raise taxes. They'll probably say, "Oh, we're only going to raise them 3 or 4%, and 3%, not the 3.9%." They did something like that last year, didn't they? They brought it down to a certain point. But you are exactly in the same position you were last year. And last year, the council said, "Well, this is too much. Find $1 million worth of cuts." And so the council voted for Burgess to find $1 million worth of cuts. And then when he does present them, they don't want anything to do with them.
But again, the time to find $1 million worth of cuts is right now, right here, before the budget is decided, not in April or May once the budget has been decided.
Well, it's already failed. Burgess did what they asked him to do.
I know.
The first thing he says, "Here's $250,000 you can save," and the council ran away with it, with their tail between their legs.
But he's looking in I can't help feeling, but he's looking in the wrong area, right? Looking at a
I don't know, man. Where would you cut taxes? Where would you cut services?
I don't know. It's very difficult, right? It's very difficult. And pursuing a comprehensive review of services, I think Laurie Lococo and Ruth Ann Neuwesteg are basically saying, is it possible the city may have currently be in financial position to continue providing every service in the same way they've done in the past, or do we have to change that? Both of them, both Lococo and Neuwesteg, are looking for a comprehensive review of all the services, and I would agree with that. Let's look at what the services we've got.
Look, this is something that happens all the time, where city councils ask for a comprehensive review so they can look at the services. This pops up all the time, and usually nothing happens about it. They find a few pennies here and there. But basically, it's down to this. If you want to reduce the amount of taxes, or at least increase them less than you need, then you're going to have to cut services. And the services you're going to cut are the ones that are non-essential. That would be recreation and things of that kind. So there might be less trails being built. There might be less pickleball courts being built and such things like that. We do want to make everything nice for our city so that we can go out to a pickleball court, or we can walk a beautiful trail. But those are, let's face it, they're non-essential services.
Absolutely.
When you've got roads, and you've got fire department, and you've got municipal works and sewer and sewer treatment plants and all that other stuff, those are essential. You have to have those things that are essential to run your city. How do you cut off all the fluff? Do you put up flowers on Main Street or Queen Street? No, you cut them off. As soon as you cut them off, you get a lot of complaints. So where do you cut? And Burgess is right. You're going to cut services. That's going to come from the arts and recreation, because they're non-essential. If anyone, and look, they spent a lot of time getting the Niagara Cultural Center going, and that's where the market is now. And if you go to the farmers market, it's a lot less. It's not as good as it was when it was in McBain Center. That's exactly where they should have left it. There was more parking there, more people went there, and yet we spent a lot of money to have the farmers market come back to Sylvia Place, and the vendors there, the ones I talked to, the one and only time I went there, they were too happy that they would rather be back to the McBain Center. So that one may have not worked. And the Arts and Cultural Center, we spent a lot of money on that. I don't know how many people even go there. So kind of things like that's real nice to have an art and cultural center and a farmer's market downtown.
Mike,
how much money did it cost us?
Mike makes the point. I would tap into municipal accommodation tax that's run by Niagara Falls Canadian Hotels Association. yes, it's held by the wrong people. It should be managed by the city, but we're not permitted to spend that tax for anything but advertising the city.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that, and that's a good point. So my question remains: if you don't want the tax increase, you're going to have to cut service. My opinion is they're going to cut services and they're going to raise taxes, and that's the only way they can do it.
Yeah.
And they really got to get a backbone when it comes to the fire department, and they are very loath to do that. They're going to have to say to the fire department, "You're making too much money. We can't afford it. We'd like to pay you as much as you want because of the service you provide, but you know what? The rest of the city has to survive, and you're just going to have to take a less of a pay raise." That, of course, because of the powerful nature of the fire department here they're practically like a lobby group.
I will
they'll fill up City Hall with all their firefighter buddies, and I think the council will just melt.
Well, I'm going to make a couple of radical suggestions about this. Okay, so I think everybody's agreed that we don't want to be putting the costs of services up. Well, let's start at the top. Let's start, and let's ask the mayor to actually take a 10% pay cut. Let's ask the CAO to take a 10% pay cut.
Never going to happen. Absolutely never going to happen. Never, ever, ever.
I'm going to always start with those kinds of things.
How about the council? Let's cut their pay in half. Never going to happen.
Yeah, but you get where I'm coming from, don't you?
Hey, how about city staff? Hey, guess what? You're going to have to cut your wages or no increase. They did that. They did that in this city. They did that. They had a freeze in wages in this city for I think it was 3 years at one time. I can't remember exactly. Before. Yeah,
I've seen it before.
Yeah, and but you know what happened in? Okay, here's the trick, and that was for everyone in the city, even the managers, right? The directors. Yeah. You know what they did though, and this is the truth. You can look it up. So the director of human resources, the director of the city, this or that, or whatever title they had, they weren't entitled to a pay raise. So you know what they did? They changed their name. They changed their name. They changed their name to executive director of human resources, etc. And because they are now an executive director, they now are entitled to more pay. So they got pay. So that's the trick they used to. And it was slick and it got unnoticed. And unless you worked at the city, unless you were staff working at the city, it went right by the councilors and everything. They changed their names. All the directors changed their names from director of to executive director of. And once you put that executive in front, that tells you to a pay raise. And so while the whole rest of the city was on a pay freeze, the directors in City Hall were getting more money because they put a little executive in front of their name. So if I was to say I'm an executive, I don't know what you'd say. I'm an executive plumber, now. So I get to get more money. I'm not just the director of the plumbing. I'm the executive director of the plumbing.
All right. Okay. So anything else on city budget?
Not at all. It's just a very plain, ordinary thing. They're going to be very loath to tell the fire department, guess what? You got to rein it in. And they'll do anything not to because it's a very unpopular move. And the firefighters have a powerful influence in the city. And if you get guys like Mike Strange, which is fawning over them, the last time when Burgess came up with the directive, possible directive to move our call center to St. Catharines. They just fell over when that happened. Nobody even, I mean, hardly anybody there really entertained that at all, because that, I'm afraid politicians might have felt that they would become rather unpopular because the average person might not understand what they were up to. So I think they're going to have to, they're going to have to get a spine and go there and tell the fire department they can't have as much money as they want. When you have 83 of your top 100 employees in the city from the fire department, that tells you something.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. RFK Jr. Has just endorsed Trump this weekend, but the question is, will that really even matter come November?
Yeah, that's up for a dispute. I think it's a toss-up. In my mind, it will make a difference, because RFK had a segment of the vote, a segment of the sort of libertarian type people, and they seem to, and those libertarian types seem to have dual loyalties. They don't care which one of the different parties come up with things that they like. So I think it could backfire on Trump, because Trump needs people who are obedient and not people who have a strong personality. This might lead to dispute, as it did to a lot of talent that Trump brought in earlier, who would turn around and just quit on him at different times. But I think it's actually a kind of this is a bad thing for Kamala Harris. Right now, Kamala Harris has a real bunch of problems in there. It all sounds all rosy and good, and Kamala looks like this, all-star on the stage. But remember, she was a very unpopular vice president, and she's an unpopular woman, as was Hillary was an unpopular woman. And they dressed up Hillary very nicely and put her up there, and it didn't work. And I'm not sure that Kamala could take the hit of transference of votes that RFK may take to the Republicans. It also makes Trump really look good, because he is cooperating now with other people who, like RFK had at one time almost 15% of votes. But that was because Biden looked so bad. But now they say that he's right down to 5%. But 5% could make the difference of winning or losing in a tight race, and it is a tight race.
Yeah. But the thing is, when I heard this and I looked at this over the weekend, there's a lot of differentiation in the polls about it, right? In some of the pollsters are saying that it didn't matter. Harris moved up in the polls, and it's actually swallowed up the RFK, much of the RFK vote. And others have been saying the exact opposite, that Trump is in the lead significantly in the polls. So it's very difficult to know what the polls are saying in America.
You can't rely on the polls. Remember, the polls in 2016 said Hillary was going to win. The polls in 2020 said that Biden was going to get a significantly more votes than he did. It was a squeaker. He won by a squeaker.
I know.
And Trump won by a squeaker. Biden won by a squeaker. This is going to be a squeaker too. You can't really rely on the polls, because they were dead wrong about Clinton, and they were dead wrong about Biden. Biden won, but
that's
they
what
had
I'm saying.
him significantly higher at one time than Trump. So when the election actually happened, he won, but he won by a slim majority.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about the whole of this thing, that in reality, everything about this election is is even weirder than all elections we've had before, because in fact it's very difficult to predict who's going to win.
Yes, and what is very they keep spouting off the polls, and that's the only thing we have to go by.
Yeah,
but I do remember the polls were significantly wrong, wrong enough that all predictions. Remember, most of the predictions were for Clinton to win in 2016. She lost, and
I never had Clinton to win at all ever in 2016.
That was you. I'm talking about the polls.
I know
right?
the polls. Yeah,
and for me in 2016, I was I didn't know who was going to win. Really, I didn't. However, right now, Kamala's DNC thing has it said, oh, the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, has really launched her ahead. Not really. It's brought up a lot of problems, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
But, we'll get into that. Yeah, very soon. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I see here is I think RFK is going to go on the campaign trail along with Vance in support of Trump. And as RFK explains why he has found Trump a better choice than the Democrats, and now he was a Democrat and he sees corruption and a collapse of the Democratic initiative, their ethics, and all that other stuff. I think that's going to make quite a difference. He was a Democrat. He's gone on over to the side of the Republicans because he has lost faith in the Democratic Party, and that has been a theme ever since the last year or two of Biden's presidency.
That whole thing about RFK, it's right from the outset that when you remember his family is Democrat royalty, right? Basically, I don't know. I was going to say almost set up the Democrat Party. I don't think that's true, but it feels that way when you hear about that family and the impact they have on the Dems.
It's very interesting how Trump has used this. He said, well, RFK, he's come from a family. Robert Kennedy was a great guy. John Kennedy was a great president, but the Democratic Party is not the same as it was then. Here I have RFK that could understand that, and he's come over to the Republicans because he sees the party of his family, the party where he has had family members, even Ted Kennedy, don't forget him, and has now lost faith in the party of his birth, basically.
Yeah.
So that, I think, will have a powerful impact on a lot of voters. When people are undecided, and you got a Democrat, a very vocal and a very prominent Democrat from a very prominent Democrat family, go around and said the Democrats don't have it anymore. You're going to go if you vote Democrat, it's the wrong way. Believe me, I was a Democrat. Then I become an independent, and now I'm endorsing Trump because I think I'll take somebody's mind and think, what is the worst of two evils here? Is it Trump or is it Harris? And RFK says, well, the Democrats are just a corrupt old party, and they don't have the interests of the people at heart anymore. Maybe that would be the convincer for you. Now, if RFK goes around and campaigns on behalf of Trump, along with Vance, and I've been surprised how well Vance speaks in front of interviews. He doesn't shirk any interview at all, like Harris has. Harris has shirked interviews, one-on-one interviews in the press. Vance hasn't. He's sat there in front of CNN and take their grilling, and he's come out pretty good. I mean, he's done well. And if RFK can do the same thing, Kamala Harris is in deep trouble.
Well, we've got September and October, so we've got 2 months, 2 months and a few days left, 2 months and a week left.
Yeah, I think the difference here will not be so much how many votes he'll bring over to Trump, or how many votes just go up in the air and some fall into Democrats and some fall to Republicans. I think if he goes around and he has incentive to do that, because he's going to get he's going to become the health secretary. He's going to get a plum post in Trump's government, one on health, one thing he likes to do, and he claims he's going to improve the health of the American people. He says they're too unhealthy, and his responsibility is going to be to make people more healthy. It sounds good. I mean, to the average voter who doesn't have time to dig into the details, it sounds pretty good. And he has incentive to go around and campaign for Trump. So you have three significant people. You've got Vance, who speaks well, who's famous for his hillbilly elegy and all that. Whatever you think of it, he speaks well, and he's prominent in the news. RFK, very prominent in the news and has been for a very long time. And they go around and they campaign with the same vigor that Trump does. I think that puts Vance at a very bad Harris in a bad situation. She may have Obama and Clinton and all those others, but they are never thought of anything as different as that same group of Democrats. And here you have a situation on the Republican side where you had an opponent of Trump, who is Vance, who came over to his side, convinced to come over to his side, or at least that's the narrative. And then you have RFK, who is different from Trump, comes from a different area at all. So when you have the Harris Democrats, they're all one block. It's Obama, Clinton, whatever. They are a clump of people. So they don't have the power to influence as much as this, I don't think.
Right. Okay. I love Mike's comment. Will JFK offer Trump the worm that ate his brain?
I think Trump's got a lot of his own worms in there. I think Trump's worms are more like electric eels. They just fire off randomly in his head. But
all right. Let's move on to the other thing about the Dems. So the Dem Congress refused to give Palestinians airtime. Basically, people who were supporting the ceasefire at the Democrat National Committee decided they were basically not given any space at all to speak at the main stage. As a result, uncommitted delegates representing the Democratic primary campaign that encouraged voters to choose uncommitted over President Biden to express their discontent over the president's handling of the Israel war in Gaza, right? So we knew this was coming. Well,
unfortunately, there's another thing that happened at the DNC that you won't find on the main news. I don't know if Fox covered it or not, but there were uncommitted voters at the DNC, and they had signs and placards, ceasefire kind of thing. Yeah. Ceasefire. So they held up these signs that ceasefire, but the Kamala Harris's campaign saw this and knew this was going to happen. So what they did was they set up a bunch of people in front of them with other signs. And soon as the people stood up with their signs, ceasefire, they stood up and blocked it with bigger signs so that the camera couldn't see them. That's how nasty they were. Like there are delegates up there. I think there were 30 or some of them. And they had signs, ceasefire in Gaza and that. And so they stood up with these signs, and it was Party Faithful, where they put up a bunch of guys in front of them with signs to block their sign so that the camera couldn't pick it up. You know what? That's bad faith. Really, it is.
May well be, but it's to my mind, it's typical American politics. I've seen it both in the Dems and I've seen it in the Republicans as well.
Yes, my problem is you don't see it written up in the main news.
No, you don't. No.
But you do hear about the Palestinians on the outside of the building or the Palestinian supporters. They're few of them are Palestinians. Most of them are other people. Dems, uncommitted voters on the outside demanding a ceasefire. Kamala, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide. Genocide Joe has got to go. Well, he went. Now it's Kamala, you can't hide. We won't vote for genocide.
Well, the other thing is that these ones they've got these Arabic, using the Arabic, the red and white colors that many Arabs use for their headdress, but also pins saying ceasefire delegate.
Yes, a ceasefire delegate is good, and the Democratic convention has been able to marginalize those people. They did not allow a Palestinian speaker. They allowed black speakers. They allowed Hispanic speakers. They allowed mixed race speakers. They allowed Asians, and they allowed Jews all to speak as we are the party of diversity. And they wouldn't allow a Palestinian. And the Palestinian that was going to speak was an anti-Trump Palestinian. And she applied to speak, and they didn't tell her if she was going to be able to speak or not till the last minute, and then they refused her. And she even gave them the speech for them to vet. This is the speech I'm going to give, and it was very, very soft on Kamala Harris and Biden, and pretty much was just an appeal for a ceasefire and for them to be able to do what they could. But the Dems were terrified of this, and they are much more interested in getting probably the Jewish vote, because that's a more powerful vote, and they don't want to offend the AIPAC, which is behind the scenes another elephant in the room nobody talks about. Yeah, and you will never hear, hardly ever, on the mainstream news about AIPAC. Never, unless they have unless the candidates are going to address AIPAC as they did back in 2016. The only one that snubbed AIPAC back then was Bernie Sanders, who is a Jew, by the way, and he snubbed them. Yeah. They were not a really good organization for the American people, and you won't even hear that. That I think, and the power behind the throne, we have to really worry about here. But in fact, I think it was who made Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart made a lot of fun about that. Oh, we had an Asian, we have black, we're really diversified. We've got Asians, we've got Jews, and we've got Palestinians. Oh, wait, we didn't have. Well, we just couldn't fit them in. We only had 8 hours a day we only had speeches for 8 hours a day for 4 days. You know, I mean, he made a sarcastic comment like that. Oh, I just couldn't fit them in. We only had 8 hours of speeches for 4 days. Yeah, they definitely could. And this could be the difference for Kamala Harris too. If these uncommitted voters who almost universally vote for Democrats decide not to vote, that could make a difference, because
it could make a heck of a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Because this race is much, much tighter than the polls suggest. Much tighter.
It may only be 1 or 2%, but 1 or 2% could make all the difference in this poll. You know?
Exactly. Look what happened to Hillary Clinton. You know, she believed the polls, and which caused her to go to, instead of to miss out on going to swing state or states she thought she had in the bag, like Michigan and Wisconsin, and found out, I passed by them. I didn't even visit those states because I thought I was going to win, and I didn't need to. Right? The polls told her that she was golden in those states. Well, it didn't turn out that way at all.
Yeah. Well, you know. Anyway.
So it's very. Yeah. I think there's a lot of issues here. Not just the fact that Harris does not have any substance to her campaign. She just says, "Oh, we have hope for the future, the way forward," but she hasn't come up with anything, and she has so far refused interviews. Trump's been on the been interviewed. He's come out and being interviewed. Vance has. I'm sure RFK will go out there and be interviewed, but she is hoping that she doesn't have to too often, because she doesn't want to be pinned down on issues. But she's got to come up with some substance, or she's not going to be able to carry this.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's certainly one of the most interesting of elections we've ever had in the US, but particularly as there was no, the change of Dem leadership, but no, not the normal way of doing it.
Yeah. Who's the Palestinian in Congress? Is it Omar? You know what I'm talking about. Her name skips me right now.
No, I don't know. Can't say I know.
Well, she's always being criticized. She's the Palestinian Rashida Tlaib. Yeah, so she's come down hard on AOC. AOC had a vacuous rah 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 type of I'm wonderful, I'm a working person, they're a working person, is wonderful. But AOC, although she spoke better, the critics have said she spoke much better than she normally does. She left off all that ceasefire stuff, which was a bit of a betrayal, because her and Tlaib are usually allies in the Congress, and she just glossed over that, and she did a rah-rah speech about how wonderful we are, and I'm a working person, and they're a working person, and Trump's a rich guy, and he has got no interest in all that. So they have said all these accusations and things like that, but they haven't come up with any substance. And the divide in the party is beginning to widen. That wedge, that Gaza wedge, is starting to open up. And if they don't have a good answer for that, or if Genocide Joe can't get a deal, if you keep it, I mean, his face must be so red from being slapped around by Netanyahu. That's probably why when he went to that debate, and he couldn't speak, it's probably because he just talked to Netanyahu, who slapped him around and made him dizzy. They got to get on control of that. And that may be the difference. To me, it would be. I would not vote for them. And Trump's going around saying he's the peace president. He said the Ukraine war would never have happened if he was in office. He's saying the Gaza war would never have happened if he was in office. And when you get frustrated, when you're an American voter and your country is extremely in debt, and you're handing over massive amounts of money to Ukraine and to Israel, and you get thinking, where's this going to end? Somebody comes along, look, how many wars were there going on when I was president? Only the ones I inherited, and I negotiated the end of them, i.e. Gaza or Afghanistan. So if he starts doing that, and you got a lot of people frustrated with the forever wars that the Democrats seem to have got us into, or got the American people into, that may itself have an appeal.
Well, it's true. He was the president that ended the Afghan war, although the Afghan war ended, the Afghan occupation ended in a massive problem for the US.
Yeah, Trump administration negotiated for the withdrawal of American troops, and he had negotiated, his people had negotiated with Taliban. Then it was up to Biden to get everybody out, and it was a complete kerfuffle. Super badly disorganized. ISIS, and it wasn't the Taliban, but it was ISIS insurgents going in, and they killed 13 U.S. soldiers. They couldn't even protect their own soldiers. They couldn't get the people that worked with them out of the country. It seriously made Joe Biden look bad at the very beginning. And now I'm sure they're going to bring that up too.
Okay, so moving on back to our home. So the Trudeau government orders the arbitration to end the rail shutdown.
Well, this is something that it happened faster than I thought. I thought within a week the government's either going to step in and say keep working and keep negotiating. If it went 2 weeks, I thought they would just tell them get back to work. Right. It happened a lot faster than I thought. Right away, the government says get back to work. Legislated the rail workers to get back to work, and the rail companies to keep doing what they're doing. And the economy was going to get more affected than possible. I think Trudeau, being very unpopular right now, couldn't take another hit with a rail strike that affected the economy. Yeah. Even if it was 2 weeks long, he couldn't even give them 1 or 2 weeks to sort it out. He just came right in and says, get back to work. Yeah, so it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we've not even had 5 days yet. Yeah. And I knew that this was going to happen, despite what Jagmeet Singh said. He can say anything he wants to, but the rail is essential to our economy. The rail being shut down is an immense problem for a country like us with vast distances. As a matter of fact, it was thought to be such an economic hit, such a problem, such a danger that the U.S. had already come up with a contingency. We're organizing contingency plans for what to do when the supply train got interrupted. So I have a feeling that Trudeau also got a call from his buddy down there, Biden, in one of his more lucid moments, and said, "You better get that fixed because we don't want this." Well, this is major, and it does affect both economies because CP Rail heads both into crosses the US as well as Canadian borders and operates on both sides of that border. As does the CN, because many of the quickest routes, even if you're not stopping, many of the quickest routes for CN will be in the United States anyway. Yeah, well, but because they're so intertwined, that the equipment goes back and forth. Remember, we have a bilateral trade agreement, a free trade agreement. Yeah. So there's an open border when it comes to stuff like this. And if you start closing that off, that's going to be a big, big problem. And I think a couple different reasons there. The government shut down the rail strike, and it had to. And it's unfortunate that rail workers are in such an essential service. You could see what happened when the Seaway went on strike just for a little while. They were able to manage to come together. The Seaway would have been affected by this strike as well. The whole economy across Canada would be. Now you're a rail worker. Now you find yourself an essential worker. So the government says you better go to binding arbitration. You better do it quick. That takes away a lot of your rights, because now you're an essential service. Now you've got the government against you too. And you have to be cognizant of the one strength you have is if you go on strike, you affect the economy, which pushes the employer to come back to you and get a deal. But in this case, the employer didn't have to. And the union says that the big bosses, CN and CPKC, engineered this. They refused to talk earlier on when they could have. This is a critical time right now because the harvest has got to come out of out west, and it's essential that the rails work when the harvest times come. So it is particularly hard on the economy when you can't get the harvest out of the prairie provinces. That's essential to their economy. It's essential to the supply chain for food.
Yeah.
It's one of our big exports as well. So now you're a rail worker, and the companies have engineered it to a point where it's very hard for you to even go on strike because of the imminent harvest and other things. And the U.S. is now barking at your prime minister, and the prime minister cannot take any more criticism for a lagging economy. Definitely not. So he's already proven that he will take a heavy hand when he wants to, as demonstrated by the Freedom Convoy and how he handled that, and how the Supreme Court gave him a good tongue lashing for that, saying that he didn't have the right to do what he did. So he was quite willing to use a heavy hand, undemocratic heavy hand against the Freedom Convoy, and he's quite willing to use a heavy hand here. Jagmeet Singh, for all his talk, will not force a non-confidence vote. He's just talking to air. Maybe he hopes that he can get some of the votes from the labor union because of this, but they're more likely to go to conservatives, actually.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that. One of the things that I noted about this is that the lockout. So since it was a lockout by the bosses, essentially the shipments of essential goods, as well as it impacted the commuter services as well. So things like GO train services were closed down as a result of this.
Yeah, there's massive irritation, but much more important is things like the business groups and trade organizations had warned of everything from a risk to the safety of Canada's drinking water. No chlorine could be shipped, to the devastation for the grain industry if farmers were unable to get their product to market at harvest time. Economists predicted Canada's economy would take a hit from the knockoff effects of factories and other businesses shutting down production if they couldn't ship their goods. In my opinion, Trudeau had no choice. And unfortunately, I think the trade union, the union here is right, that the companies were able to avoid negotiations until now. Now, when the government is very unpopular, now when the harvest season comes, and now when you're facing an economic downturn that's predicted, I don't know if it will happen, but and I don't think Trudeau could take the hit. Can you imagine all the businesses and all the people being laid off because of this? That wouldn't look good to the government. On the other hand, though, he's had to force people away from the bargaining table, which is the right of the union member to be able to do this. And this reduces the effect that the union has. So basically, the union is fighting big business and the government. On the other hand, they also have to be cognizant of the fact that they're affecting the entire economy of the country. So it's their bad luck that their jobs are tied to the economy of the whole country, which makes them essentially essential workers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if they are essential workers, you better give them something. You can't say, you got to, this is going to affect the whole economy of the country. You are too important to go off on strike. Then you better say, okay, you're very important. So here, let's do something for you. Let's address your safety concerns. And that's mainly what the Teamsters have come up with. It's a safety concern that they're worried about.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and most of that, as we said when we spoke about this last week, it was about safety. Everything was about safety.
I've never heard anything about wages yet. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but that's the biggest issue that the Teamsters have come up with.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, the big bosses, of course, they're shrugging their shoulders. I don't know what they're talking about. We're wonderful. We're wonderful employees. We love our workers. We treat them so well. Safety? Oh, well, I don't know about that, but yeah, well, they're fine. So I don't know. It's going to be a big thing. Jagmeet Singh looks like a goof, though. He's got no teeth. He's coming across and saying, "Oh well, definitely not get involved. The government should not get involved. Let the Teamsters do what they want to do." But then after Trudeau just says, within a couple of days, get back to work, Jagmeet Singh says, "Oh, I don't agree with that," but he's got nothing to follow up with. He's got nothing. He can't say, "Okay, I'm going to call election. We're going to do a non-confidence." No, and he'd be better off if they do it now, because right now the NDP are polling higher than the conservative or the Liberals. He'd be better off calling it now. On paper, he'd do better. The NDP would do better than the Liberals right now.
Yeah, the thing about that is that there are, that whole thing. You know as well as I do that even if there was an election today, the result wouldn't be as clear cut as that polls would make it out to be. There's some seats that the Liberals will never lose, right? Even if they're in the worst possible moment, they'll never lose, right? You know what I mean.
Well, the NDP could be getting the Verdun vote. That's the Liberals will have held Verdun, which is up for a by-election in September 16th. They may lose that to the NDP, and that's in Quebec. So
maybe it is a time to turn to the polls. But anyway, Trudeau and his buddies are actually, the cabinet is in a retreat in Halifax.
JT's in trouble.
But there are a lot of storm clouds there. It's not as if it's going to be plain easy sailing, So there's a 3-day cabinet retreat in Halifax, Nova Scotia, that started yesterday. And where there are themes of fairness, Canada-US relations, but it's not necessarily going to be going all Trudeau's way.
No, the Canada-US relationships, I can understand why they would get together for that. They have to anticipate who's going to have a contingency plan on whether Trump or Kamala Harris wins. It's a tight race, so they have to be prepared for either one of them to win and adjust their strategies one way or the other. However, the elephant in the room again is Trudeau's leadership.
Yeah.
A lot of the MPs are worried about a complete wipeout, and and a lot of the uncommitted voters don't like Trudeau as a leader. His personal numbers are way down. They don't love Poilievre and they don't love Jagmeet Singh, but they hate Trudeau, and that may make the big difference. And when you're an MP and you might lose your seat because the leader is unpopular, you're going to say, "Get out of there, JT." Now, I've heard that and of course, I've made the prediction that Trudeau's 9/11 will be around 9/11, and it sure looks like I might be right this time, because he has to get out of the way soon if they plan to get if they ever plan to get another leader up and going. And they're talking about various other leaders that might be able to turn the corner.
All I can say is
the example of Harris in the U.S., where the Democrats' fortunes turned around quite suddenly when they dumped Biden, and the Trudeaus, that hasn't been lost on the Liberals. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, actually, Biden was definitely waning. Whatever you might say about Harris, is she's definitely put the Dems up in the polls in south of the border. Whether that will be reflected in the final poll, we're yet to see. But yeah, well,
Well, it's given the Democrats a reason to come to the polls. That's all right.
Yeah, it's interesting that right at the moment, of course, here we've got this cabinet meeting going on. Does it mean that anybody's really going to be, are they going to be dumping Trudeau? Probably not.
I think Trudeau's going to have a walk in the snow like his dad did. Now he might be like he is an eternal optimist, and he thinks he believes himself very, very well, and he's a very good politician. And the party itself was buoyed up by his extreme popularity back in 2015. And he was the golden boy around the world, as you remember. Everybody loved him. Here comes Trudeau. The Europeans loved him. The Dems down south loved them. Everybody loved them. But now nobody loves him in Europe. Nobody loves him here. He could be the albatross around the Liberals. Now, the Liberals, if I was a Liberal MP, and I'm thinking, well, we're going to take a shellac in the next election. All indications are that way. I don't want to lose my seat. So I want to minimize. I want to minimize the shellacking we're going to get. I don't want to lose my seat, and Trudeau might be the difference between me keeping or losing my seat, particularly in battleground places where Liberals have the edge. But we saw what happened in St. Paul, didn't we? The by-election in St. Paul and Toronto.
Yeah. Nothing's guaranteed at this election now.
And another thing that was Bennett. Bennett was a cabinet member who retired after she was tossed out of the cabinet. The cabinet shuffle happened 1 year ago, and this was supposed to change the fortunes of the Liberals. Well, they dumped Bennett from the cabinet, so she retired, and that was her seat that they lost. And all the Liberal elite went there to campaign for the new Liberal candidate, and the Conservatives won. So that told him something. And now Lametti, I think his name is, it was the guy for Verdun. He got tossed out of the cabinet. So he retired and left his seat vacant. They might lose that to the NDP. There's the message. There's the result of your cabinet shuffle. You lost one very important seat, the one you've had for nearly 40 years. And all the cabinet, all the Liberal elite went there. Trudeau went there to campaign in St. Paul 2 or 3 times. Freeland went there. The prominent cabinet ministers went there. They spent a lot of money there, and they lost. And that's a big bellwether.
Yeah. So when is this by-election going to happen? Oh, 16th of September.
16th of September, yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, indications, although it's a solid Liberal seat, just like St. Paul, but right now it looks like the NDP are on the cusp of taking it, and or at least neck and neck. That would be another blow to the Liberals. So I think Trudeau, the whole party knows that he has to step down soon if they're going to blossom up another leader, so they can minimize the damage that's going to come next year.
It's an interesting one, because in the coalition this coalition government that we have, or at least, actually government that's buoyed up more by the NDP than really a coalition per se, because the NDP doesn't hold any positions of power in that government at all. They've just been convinced that they've got to keep it going forward. I'm not so sure that really says anything anymore. And if NDP do take this seat, well, time to declare their independence.
Jagmeet Singh has to step up, because his party's going to take a massive shellacking.
And it's, exactly the whole point about this is that, in fact, actually, the NDP, other than in places like Hamilton, which has been a lot of their kind of traditional ground in Ontario, and out west where they get the farmer support. The NDP is going to be as badly treated as the Liberals are.
Out west, the Liberals hardly have any say at all in the Western provinces. It's either NDP or Conservative. So the Liberals are just pushed right out of there. And I think that's at risk that the NDP, if Jagmeet Singh plays his cards right, the NDP could start to take over for the Liberals, the real alternative to the Liberals. And the Liberals would be the third party in there, and not the NDP. But I don't think the strategy is not long term enough for that to hapen. He would have been better off letting the Conservative win the last election and then rebuild and then be an alternative.
I'm going to put another alternative to you. The second party could be Bloc Québécois.
Possibly. That's depending on how badly but they're under pressure too, because the Conservatives are eating up some of their support in Quebec. Surprise, surprise. That hasn't happened since Mulroney times. And if the Quebecois start voting Conservative, that's going to be extreme insult to the Liberals again. And remember, under Layton, the NDP did very, very well in Quebec. Right now, the Liberal strategists don't know what to do. Of course, the number one answer to that is to get rid of Trudeau, but he's got to go soon. That's why he said his 9/11 should be around 9/11, because if he doesn't go now, he's not going to give the party chance enough to reinvent itself for the election. Right now, as the Liberals sit, they're going to they might get wiped right out of Parliament if they're not careful.
Well, and especially as you're saying with this by-election likely to go NDP.
And every kind of cabinet shuffle or announcement or this or that they're trying to make up ground. Like I said, in 2015, like we've said on the show before, in 2015, the Liberals had a building initiative to bring in make more houses. Well, they found that they didn't do that, and they didn't prepare for the amount of immigrants. I mean, I'm talking about stuff I'm hearing on liberal-oriented news shows that the government has blundered completely, did not prepare for the influx of people coming into the country when you can't build enough houses or take care of their health care. Now, that's come from Liberal. It's not coming from the Conservative side.
Yep. All right. And I think we're going to have to kind of leave it at that point. And Chris says, thanks for the show.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks for listening in. And now you know what opinion to take, whatever that's opposite to whatever we. Without further ado, I bid you adieu, and let's pray for peace.